Welcome to another episode of the Day Witness podcast. In the Day Witness podcast, we'll be discussing the topic of discrimination. So hopefully during this podcast, you'll listen to a lot of the shared experiences from people with minority background living in Norway. Today we have Cecilia Salinas, who's a social anthropologist and also a postdoc researcher. She's currently working on the project called Private Lives, which will go and throughout to 2024, and she'll be working alongside 4 other researchers at the University of Oslo. The research project Private Lives is actually a collaboration work with the Norwegian Museum of Science and Technology, and hopefully there will be an exhibition by the end of 2023, so you get an understanding of that work. Now, as far as I understand, that this project is looking into digital technology and diversity politics. And today, the topic that we are going to dive into is how Cecilia discovered the red thread in her research when talking to people who was the subject of your research in digital technology and diversity and politics, and how that affected her, and how the activism or ARTivisme exhibition came about. And that was displayed last year in November, I think it was.
It started in February 2022 and have been traveling until this February 2023.
So Cecilia is from Argentina, and she's been in Norway for 22 years. She has an interest in the intersection of art and anthropology, and in her master's thesis, where she was looking into the consequences of the establishment of the Finnish pulp industry in Uruguay. She won an award for that. So definitely you have a lot of sort of experiences, and you have traveled in Uruguay and Argentina, and now in Norway, looking at this combination, as I see it, as the art and anthropology side, as well as diversity politics. So why don't we dive in, introduce a little bit about this project and how things came about.
Yeah, thank you for having me here and sharing about my project. Yes, I am a postdoctoral researcher in a project called Private Lives, where we see how Norwegian sociality, or the way we socialize, have changed with digitalization. And there are different projects, and my projects started looking at how Norwegians with minority backgrounds working in the art and cultural sector uses social media, primarily Facebook and Instagram, to contest ideas of Norwegianness. And in a way, as an anthropology, we have a frame, an idea that what we are going to do, but at the same time we are very explorative. So in a way, we don't want to have so much preconceived ideas of what we are going to find out. So we have some topics, some ideas, and this is the way I entered this project. And then I did primarily participant observation. So I did the classical field work that I are with people, following at their works, talking to them at home, different places, walking, doing what they are doing. At the same time that I started to follow them on Facebook and Instagram to see what are they posting and sharing, and trying to understand why. And through that participant observation, I discovered that people were really concerned about discrimination, about racism, about topics of unbelonging, the different ways of feeling unbelonging, about flexible identity, diverse ways of being, the issue of being relating to different cultures simultaneously. So most of them have been born in Norway. They are either born from migrant parents or or from one mother or father from Norway, and then from other places, and some few arrived to Norway as a child, refugees, and talking to them, learning about their life, their struggles. Yes, it was emotionally intense for me as well. They in addition to being concerned about topics of trauma, of discrimination, racism, they also talk a lot about issues of war, how that affect their parents, how discrimination, the racism and discrimination that their parents have also experienced, because it's not the only what they experience themselves, but also what their parents are experiencing or have been experiencing. So it was really, really intense, and sometimes I didn't have words to put into my field notes those experiences, what those meetings did with me. And I remember it was, I think I was after 6 weeks in the field work that I was talking with participant in a music studio, and there were some friends, and then there was this man telling me how it was for him to grow up in transit countries, escaping from war, having traumatized parents, coming to Norway, feeling the discrimination. And then it was a really intense and painful story, a narrative. And then he told me about a story of him competing with a kite. And it was the first time a picture coming to me. And then instead of writing the field note that evening, I started illustrating. And it was the first night of many, many evenings and nights during the field work that I draw. And I was not conscious about what I was doing. I was just drawing and trying to
maybe cope with
to process these difficult emotions I had in myself. And then after some months, I understood that the drawings were really a kind of have a therapeutic aspect in it, and it gave me distance also, because I am from Argentina. I grew up in a poor neighborhood in Buenos Aires, in the outskirts of Buenos Aires. My parents are of mixed racial backgrounds or ethnic backgrounds. I don't know how we call it, but they are from poor province in northern Argentina. And they moved to Buenos Aires trying to find a hope, a better future. And they were a tough life. And as a child, because of my phenotype, because of my class background, the way I look like, made people to discriminate me at school, or especially in Buenos Aires, there is this. It's a class-based society. It's a racist society as well. So those experiences have marked me. And then as an immigrant in Norway, I have also my own experience of discrimination. So when I was doing this research, I felt that they were so intense, and I could identify with the participants of my research, so intense, with so much empathy. And sometimes I think that I was afraid that those emotions could stay in the way for the kind of scientific rigor that I demanded. So I discovered that the drawings gave me that distance, that I could, but still I was drawing without thinking so much what I was drawing. There were children and adolescents in the illustrations, in different situations with different phenotype, but I didn't have a clear idea what that was. So I understood after the fact that which illustration summarize which stories, and some illustrations summarize many stories or similar stories.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting that you brought it up, because I think I had some kind of similar experiences, you know, when I was doing my own, you know, coverage and stories, and there is certain red threads, and, you know, discrimination does come up. And I think it's really hard to avoid, especially if you're working in, like, the topic you're doing in diversity politics, and also, you know, identity and things like that. And I think what I see happen, and I think we had this discussion before we came on, was that often when we as professionals, when we're talking about these subjects, you know, and we want to obviously preserve the integrity of the work, often, like, on the outside, people question, like, oh, you experienced this yourself, so then you must be biased. So how does your work, you know, it must be biased as well. And I don't think that is the case. And I think that is a problematic way of framing someone who's a professional, where we have to kind of avoid our own identity. You know, we are intersectional. We are a person of color. You know, we do have our own experiences, especially with discrimination as well. And I don't think that has anything to say in terms of the integrity of our work. In fact, it actually informs and deepens the understanding, because we understand it ourselves because we lived through it. So when we look at it, you know, our lens are going to be different from someone else who have absolutely no experience of these type of things. And I think that needs to be told. You know, that needs to be explicitly said, that your own experiences as a professional shouldn't be stuck with the integrity of your work. I think that all of these is the embrace and inclusivity of the work that we do, and it makes it even more special. It makes it unique. It makes it more in depth. And I think those that the participant, knowing you know, gone through it, it actually creates trust, mutual trust and understanding, and they know that their story is in good hands. And I think that was what happened here, you know, because I looked at some of the work you've done, especially the exhibition, and I think about it'd be nice to share some of those stories with you and to the audience here. So I picked a few of them, and one of them is from a boy or a young man named Felix. So I'm just going to read the passage here. Maybe it was Victor's murder that changed everything. They acted as though it was a suicide that confirmed that nobody wanted us to exist. Indeed, it shaped us. We were around 14 or 15. My group of friends had the same dreams as the Norwegian kids, but not the same opportunities. A handful of the ones in my class fell through the cracks. It was a trend that gradually worsened year by year. The combination of poverty and no fucking possibilities, no social sense seen to be part of, a lack of financing or after-school activities, and constant discrimination by the police resulted in gangs forming and led to crime. Young people seek to belong, shared exclusion that welcomes them with open arms, says a pal of mine. And in the drawing that you have here, it was like staring down like a bullet. So you see a boy standing with a phone, but
with a
around
mobile phone.
Yeah, with a mobile phone, but around in front of him is a gun aim. So if you look down, like a long gun, and then it's kind of a point. So it's like a gun pointing at him, right? And I think that's a very powerful image. So that's just one story about a boy. I'll read another one. This is from Samara. Questions concerning the lack of representation arose at a very early age within me. My friend wanted to be a model, but the fashion industry does not display very many dark-skinned people. To make matters even worse, she was bullied, and the kids at school said she was ugly because she wore a hijab and was dark-skinned. It took quite a long time before she began to like who she was. I had much the same feeling. So when Noor shared a picture of herself on Twitter with the Vogue logo and the headline, "Being black is not a crime," I thought to myself, 14-year-old Samira should have seen this. And I think this is a very powerful one. And in the picture that you've drawn is a little girl with a red hijab looking down on a Vogue cover with two person on it who were white. And that kind of gives an understanding of sort of what a day-to-day child is looking into, really. So I read the third and last one. I think like this kind of gives this good sense of your exhibition. So this is the last one from Sarah. I dreamed that I was involved in a trial. Norway wanted to take away my citizenship, and I disagreed in a way that my lawyer was defending me. So I called him over to the side and explained that the argument needed to be put forth in opposite terms. It's not the case that Norway did me a favor. We are not a problem, nor are we fortune hunters, but we are a valuable resource for Norway, and Norway needs us. And we can be part of benefit to Norway if we get the opportunity. Then I woke up. The Mustafa case is really getting to me. It is merciless. Imagine if this were me or you. If Mustafa isn't Norwegian, what the fuck am I? I think this is really powerful language, and also like in the image as well, those I'm describing for particularly those who is listening in, is an image of what is like a passport, and a little girl who's looking down in a white dress, and on it across her is ungranted, ugyldig, so valid without photo, valid without So walk me through maybe like when you were, looking into each of these stories, and I think it's really powerful, and it kind of represents the different discrimination, especially as I understand these were kind of children, really. They're quite young kids, and well, I'm 36, but so everyone seems young to me, So especially when this first one, Felix, is saying like when he was 14 and 15, as a teenager, he's feeling this, and then Samira is a young girl, and she's probably 14 here, experiencing these things. What goes through your mind when you were, sharing these stories?
Yeah, and this was maybe the powerful, because talking to the research participants, they took me to their childhood. They couldn't not talk about how it was to grow up in Norway. So it was I thought in the beginning that we were talk about the situation today, some contemporary things, but they took me. They chose to every time I need to go back, tell you how it was to grow up in Norway, what kind of ideas I had, what kind of emotions, feeling, how I was encountered. So it was in that way that all the images came to me in the form of children, and then I also I could relate as Cecilia as a child as well, how it was for me to grow up in Argentina, because what is similar for the research participants and me in relation to our childhoods is that I am from Argentina. I belong there. At the same time that there is these ideas about how an Argentinian looked like that racialized me and told me that I didn't belong in a way. And this is what was so powerful when I was talking to the research participants, that the feeling that they were told that they didn't belong. So it's this discrimination, but also this existential feeling that when you are looking in the way you are, that gaze that tell you that you don't, in a way, with prejudice or whatever we can call it, then it makes something with you and give this feeling that you don't belong. And there is many forms of not belonging, and there is many forms also of belonging, and they create belonging. But as a child, it's really difficult. And this is something that I have talked with many of the research participants, that also the issue that for a long time you feel that you are the problem. And then you grow up and you understand that society has a problem, that this is not an individual experience, but it's the collective experience of a group, and then the society have a problem, and we have to do it. The society has to tackle this.
And you're right, you know, and I think like society do need to tackle this. And I think it's interesting, like everything that comes back into our roots, right? And it's part of our identity, our childhood is part of it. I'm just wondering, like how, because we talked about how art is coming into your work, but I also see art as a very therapeutical process as well. So when you did the exhibition, and I'm pretty sure the participant came as well, what were their reaction?
And okay, just to tell those who are listening now that the exhibition or the illustrations ended being an exhibition through a process where I started to think, okay, I have these drawings, how can, or that they were a series, because when I was illustrating them, I didn't think much about what was these drawings. And then I started to think that these images gave me this possibility to make theory in another way. But at the same time, I was thinking that maybe they need a little of a context. But I didn't want to give definitions or anthropological theories to put around the illustrations. So I was thinking, what can I do? And then, I am committed to anonymization of the research participants. So I was thinking, what can I do? And then I decided to create these characters, give the names to the different illustrations, and create short texts, work in a kind of creative mode, reading my field notes, thinking, feeling the different conversations and what I knew of the bigger field of study. And then I create this short text like as if they were answers of the research participants. First I started with the real answers, but then I saw that they need a more context, that it will be decontextualized if I had just an utterance or something. So I built those texts, and then I decided to do a traveling exhibit that would travel through public libraries. And for me, it was important that there were public libraries, because in the public libraries are these kind of bridges to the society, and there are so many people coming to the library with different backgrounds, with different professions and ages. And for me, ARTivisme, or as I call it, I don't call it in English ARTivism, but more ARTivisme, in a way to make the word ARTivism into Norwegian.
Context.
And it's a way also to make people to stop. Like, oh, why ARTivisme and not ARTivism? You know, it's like I want to in a way to make people slow down and think and take it, the stories. And for me, racism and discrimination is about the gaze and how certain groups are being observed and looked and categorized. So in a way, with the illustration, is my way also to to turn the gaze in a way into something visceral. So when the audience come, they get these visceral reactions. And to answer your question, how the participants of the research have encountered the ARTivisme and have been really positive. And several have mentioned that it's a relief that they are characters, that they are not real persons, and there is two things in a way, because as they said, it's painful. So in a way, it's okay, they are characters. They are at the same time that they recognize themselves. So for me, ARTivisme have given me this possibility to create this visceral gaze and create visceral reactions, where some groups get this comfort, belonging, the sense of connection, while others get disconnection or this discomfort. And I think from that discomfort, that we can create a dialogue, I think, away from the polarization that we find in the commentary field in Facebook.
I think it's really interesting that you brought up the word relief. And we've been interviewing people who shared their own stories of discrimination, and one of the things they said was after sharing their story, they felt a sense of relief. And I think I think it goes down to like creating that space, and I think that was through your work. This is my own interpretation. You can share it in the comments, or it'd be interesting to hear what you guys all think as well. But it's creating that space to be able to talk about these things and not be gaslighted and not be put down and be judged. And I think one of the things I also feel a little bit sadness is when I think they're channeling themselves into a character that you have made as an illustration, and it represents one type of experience. But I also equally have a feeling like they couldn't be themselves to be able to talk about these stories. It means that they couldn't be their authentic selves because it's so painful. And I sometimes think like, if everyone can just be themselves in whatever spaces that they are and be able to just say, this is who I am, wouldn't the society be better? And it comes back to the question, we mentioned about like, this is a society problem, this is a societal problem, and it drives into the culture of society. And I think in Norway in particular, I find there's so much resistance. And I don't know whether you've actually heard this, comes up quite often, especially when I've been in so many like forums. It's like, oh, Norway just needs some time. We didn't have immigration before, and now we're having so much more coming in. We're still trying to identify. I don't know what your thoughts around that. Through, you've been to like 2 other countries already, in Uruguay, doing understanding their culture there, and from Argentina in your home country, and now in Norway, how do you see society can develop forward and fighting against discrimination and racism? What are your thoughts around how can society move forward?
No, I think it's what you are doing in a way also, informing, talking about, bringing to the fore different diverse perspectives, stories about of experiences that the majority of the Norwegians don't have. So they have to, but they don't, there is more than just knowing, we need to understand. There is economist from Chile that I love, I don't remember his name just now, McNiff. He said that we have come to a point in history where we know a lot, but we understand very little. And I think that we need more understanding, and that understanding is translated into practices at different levels, at all in different aspects of the society, in different professions. We need to bring these practices that that really include people, that create the kind of diversity that is not just something that we can check, but is real, something that we can create a diverse community. And I think it's talking about these stories about it's writing, it's art, and for me the participants of my research, they are them who are the experts. I see them as the experts of the topics they are sharing with me. They are great artists expressing through different form of artistic expression these concerns and how society have to change or first understand these stories and what we are doing and the complexity of discrimination that is not necessary or is very seldom is about this outright hate, but it's all of the form of prejudice and subtle form for racism that we are encounter people who look like different than the majority of.
And it's all layered as well. It's like discrimination is all, it's so many different things. It's like, you know, when I have people coming in, it's just like, it's not just the one experience, it's like multiple experiences, and it could be daily, even monthly. You know, I'm sure you and I can have stories like this long, you know, and we probably would never end this like interview in the sense that we're going to go into every single one of them. And I think it's, you know, because we've been discussing a little bit about this, like the work that you do is artistic expression, and it's very visual. But you also like have text, and you have both Norwegian and English, you know, to express what those discrimination look like. And we also had a discussion about, you know, how can we fully express ourselves sometimes, you know, in a foreign language as well. And I know you had some, and I often, I do have this, when I have people coming in, you know, they also feel a little bit like, oh, but I don't speak English fluently, what do I do? And I think that that is also why I'm trying to display that, you know, it doesn't matter if you speak with English with an accent. It doesn't matter if you come in and you can express something in English. You can always use your own language and be able to explain it afterwards. I do that often, and you know, I have 3 languages in my head quite often. And we were laughing because like I'm outside and I'm like jotting down like notes about her bio, and I was trying to read her bio, and I keep tripping up, and I keep going, oh God, I can't even say this properly right now. But I think it's so natural, and I think needing that space to be inclusive, to be included. And I know like in academia, it's also quite difficult as well. I don't know if you want to dive into it, but you know, I've been in quite a lot of academic forums, and especially also Norwegians, they're always afraid of speaking in English. So unfortunately, it's very hard for me to get researchers or anyone to be able to speak in English with me. But there's so many ways around it. You know, there's no shame, I feel like.
But this is and maybe it's not maybe. I know that my relation to language, to speaking, I learned Norwegian and English at the same time as an adult. So that have been very formative and shaped my identity as Argentinian Norwegian today, that I am not fully fluent in Norwegian, or I have this marked accent, in Spanish accent, and in English is something that I am still developing. It's a major project because I don't speak English in my everyday life, and I am trying to challenge my own shame, because I feel ashamed when I don't speak English properly. You know, when sitting here, it costs me to sit here and try to express myself properly with this foreign in a foreign language, and
I think you're doing great. I understand you, so I don't think you have any problem. So I think like I don't think you have any problem with it. So first said that, you know, I don't think that's it. So,
but still, and this is something that also have talked with the the participants of my research because they don't have that problem. They speak fluent Norwegian and they speak many more languages. But their parents have, so they also can relate to my own story, and I can relate to the story of their parents because they have this, the same problem as I. That you learn when you learn languages as an adult, and you maybe don't have the ability because it's also an ability or a kind of talent. Then you stay with the trouble.
I think there's a certain kindness as well, because I certainly relate to that. You know, me, I'm born in the UK. My parents are from Hong Kong, so like I understood when being an interpreter for my parents as well. Like they didn't speak perfect English, and I often find like, you know what, if you're kind, you know, if you're compassionate, you give space, you know, I think anyone can express themselves as well as they could. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to know all the vocabulary. I know some people are, you know, there's people who didn't speak English very well to me, but they're so on point with their words. It's like that. It's this you know, the simplicity of putting words together, and it doesn't need to be
economy of words.
Yeah, it's really really powerful, and it's meaningful, and I feel so much delight because I actually learn from them as well. And I don't think, I mean, like I have my own experiences as well, being discriminated with language. You know, last year I was in a lot of interviews, job interviews, and one of them was. You know, the company was like, oh, we're all on diversity and inclusion and everything. And then when I asked them, like, okay, how is your working language, you know, within, you know, in the company that you have, does everyone speak Norwegian? Is it okay for me to speak English? If I struggle to reply in Norwegian, would that be okay? And she said, no, everyone here speaks Norwegian. We write in Norwegian. Our conversation is in Norwegian. So you need to speak in Norwegian. I said, and I fired back and going like, do you actually understand what inclusion means? You're all bragging about how diversity, inclusion, workplace and all of that, but that was your statement there. This is your company value, but do you actually understand it? Exactly what you're saying, do you understand it? Do you have put it into practice? And obviously they didn't. So I walked out of there going like, even if you offer me a job, and you know, they did, like in the end, like, yeah, if we give you a contract right now, you know, would you take it? And I was like, no. I say, because like, if I'm not being valued at work, I'm not able to grow. I'm not going to be able to bring my potential self to work as well. And I think that is, there's so much impact to all these layers of biases that you're talking about, like language, to the skin color that you are, and you know, your way of being, your identity, and
the way you move, the way,
you know, the way you are, you know, like even how you dress, you know. So I think
your smell.
Yeah, the food and how you value hygiene. I think hygiene is one of the things. It's so funny because it's like I often relate to like East Asians, like we're so hygienic, and then when I see quite some people like in different cultures, it's like you know, it's just like being clean, you know, when you come home and have a shower, you know, those things, and they don't do that, and my head just goes, you know, goes into a rocket in my head, and you know, it's one of those very interesting things. I'm just going to look at other questions that I wanted to ask you as well, and I think like there's something that I often ask, and I sometimes forget when I do interviews is when you're going through the things you were going through. Did you have someone to talk to at the time?
Yes, I have. I have good friends that fortunately and unfortunately have some of the same experiences that I have, so they can understand me without rejecting my experiences. Because one of also the things that are really difficult is when you experience things that for you are experienced as racism, as discrimination, and then you share with others that don't have these kind of experiences, and the rejection or the correction, the need to correct you and say it's not, or you have misunderstood, or you know, and so having a friend that understand this, or understand with the entire body, it's fantastic, and I have those friends, but also therapy. It's unfortunately.
Yeah, I go to therapy. There's no shame to that. So I think like it's better to normalize it.
Talking to professionals about and because this dynamic between being devaluated and shame, and how you create value in and you love yourself as the way you are, and then also how you don't feel shame, and shame is difficult. It's like shame. It's really difficult to get rid of it. Even when I know a lot of things and I have learned a lot, I still, as I said, I feel sometimes ashamed the way I speak English. And it's because my story, and I am working on it. But it takes time. It takes a lot of work. So
thank you for sharing that. And I think like shame is a huge thing. I think for all of us, I have my own shame to work through as well. And I think when it comes to discrimination, it's something that we can't avoid. It's not going to end tomorrow. It's not going to end tomorrow. And I think like every person of color is going to keep experiencing this thing. And I think like all of us, in some ways and form, either go to therapy, and sometimes if we're lucky, we have friends, which is why I find this question is really interesting asked quite often, is if you have someone to turn to when you have these issues. And sometimes when you're an immigrant and when you come here, when you don't have a huge network, you're actually quite isolated, you're quite alone, you're sitting with a lot of these emotions and processing and knowing where to get help, really. So I guess like it comes down to the question that now is, through all the work that you've done now, and everything you experience personally and academically and professionally in all sorts of ways, what do you think can be done? What is the solution do you think we need now to kind of eliminate racism or eliminate all forms of discrimination? What do you think?
I think it's many things, but it's more research, more art. I think, as I say, artistic practices are that goes away from text-centrism. Not all people like to read dissertations or scientific articles. So just to have many people doing many different things. So it's research. It's also good journalism. The kind of journalism you do, it's about also to have very difficult conversations, to do it, and just and not being so assertive that one knows what it's about. Not one assertive in relation to what I know, but also what I think I am listening what you are saying. It's like not be so assertive, be more going to more the curiosity and explorative. What are you saying, and having this really difficult conversation when you are saying that we all are racist. Why are you saying that? Instead of just or being just jump into the trenches and start to shooting from the Facebook and from it's like. So I think we need more difficult conversations face to face, less on social media.
I think you're quite on point with that, and I think that's really valuable insight, and I think that's something I and I think many people who are listening in would agree to as well. And being open, in these difficult conversations when someone is going through something that maybe you haven't. We have the right to express, and to be, seen in a non-judgmental way. And if you are reacting that way, I would say checking with yourself, where is that coming from? Is it from an ego side? Is it an arrogance that you think that? Because I think, for all of us who are immigrant, whoever we talk to sometimes, and in particular I find with Norwegians, and sometimes I kind of back away and not talk to Norwegians about my own experiences, unless they're open enough, is that don't be so quick to think that we don't like Norway. Don't be so quick in your feet to even thinking that somehow, if you don't like here, just go back to your home country, and sometimes we don't have that option. And like you said, just to be open and to have these difficult conversations, be curious, to be open, and trying to understand and comprehend like what the other person is going through, and help them emotionally. I think that's really, really important.
And even I think ourselves, and when I say ourselves, when I'm talking also about me, and for me it was also ARTivisme helped me not to be so assertive of what racism was, that phenomenon, because it's easy for me, because I experienced racism in one way, or discrimination in Argentina, to think that I already know how it looked like in Norway. So just to also be curious in relation to that, not be so assertive in relation to that, having the possibility to accept that maybe I am wrong, or I was mistaken, or I was, So it's from both sides.
Yeah, no, I think that's beautifully stated, and I think that's really also another important point. Like, don't be too fast in thinking you know everything. And I think for me, like in this topic, and when I sit down and listen to people's story, I'm actually learning as well. You know, how everyone is feeling. You know, and I think like it comes back to just being open again and being kind. So I guess we're coming to the end of this interview. Is there anything else you would like to add that I haven't asked? Is it something you want to say?
No, I don't think so. So
No.
just thank you. Well, thank you to those who are watching or listening. So.
Well, thank you so much, Cecilia, for coming in and sharing your own personal story, and also the research you've done. I think it's really, really important. So hopefully I'll see you more and see the work you do. I think we have so much more in common than we think. So.